Travis Wynn Goodsell. Let's see if we can get a video in without this much disturbances, as it's getting closer to dinner time, but still have guys putting stuff together here. So it's important to understand you have to watch all my videos. I'm only able to do pieces of the whole big picture, and it's even difficult to do a summary other than the learning of the Jews matter of prophesying, and already you're confused. And so taking that from the Book of Mormon and applying it to the Gospels, a lot of questions get answered. So we have in Matthew, and you need to understand these were the only 4 that were accepted with the new great and abominable church. There were many others that were rejected. All of those need to be included again. They're plain and precious truths taken out. Especially the birth of Mary. It's a fun one. So, chapter 1 of Matthew gives us the genealogy, and it says right at the very beginning, son of David. And then, I think I'm about to be disturbed, and then gets to the prophecy of Isaiah, does not name him. So you can see the prophecy of needing to be through Judah, Abraham, etc. Even Ruth is in here. And with the Isaiah, he doesn't name Isaiah. Doesn't put in, it's a sign. That's kind of crucial, and they left it out. And that's why there's all sorts of problems. And then instead of calling him Emmanuel, which is what the prophecy says it is, and people focus too much on its incorrect translation that was developed in the ADs during Constantine's period of time, rather than the original one, the sun at noonday, or the Most High. And that comes from the Greek. Luke uses that term to refer to Emmanuel. It's the sun god at noonday from the Egyptians. And so thus the language of the Egyptians. But they name him Jesus. And Jesus is a Hebrew word that's composed of 2 words, Yah, the Hebrew God, and Shua, which is salvation. And so with the contradictory information, likes to walk in and out, so this is going to be fun. And we've got some problems, obviously, because he's misquoting Isaiah. He names the character of his book the wrong name. So we're looking at some major problems. And we know these are problems because there's thousands of different divided Christian groups that all claim the incorrect name. Even the Mormon Church, under Brigham Young, has been using the wrong name. But in chapter 2, we have when he was born in Bethlehem of Utah. Phonetically the same. There's an interesting thing that you don't catch right away. You have to know about Revelation chapter 12. Because Revelation chapter 12, verses 1, 2, and 3 is exactly what Matthew's referring to. A sign in the heavens that he leaves out. He's now making it literal history, sort of like what Constantine did. This exposes a dating issue here that has crept in by redactors to the original text of the book of Matthew. And so we actually know the start date of the book of Matthew. And I've been going over it with you, 23 September 2017. That's the start date. It never existed, and I checked during that time period. And I checked plus and minus just in case the 1 AD and the 4 AD was something else. That's how I found the 4 AD, by the way. 8 April 4 AD, which is right there in the Book of Mormon. 600 years from the time Lehi left Jerusalem, which also corresponds with Abraham sacrificing Isaac. And Messenger appears in the Ram constellation, where the solar eclipse occurred. And so then they're talking about stars. They leave out sign from Isaiah, but they just gave the sign in the heavens here for us. So this is how you know that they're talking about the latter days. Prophecy of the learning of the Jews. This is not literal history. Because then you got Herod, he died in 7 BCE. That causes some problems, doesn't it? And so, what happens next? Chapter 3. In those days came John the Baptist. What's going on? What do we do here? The whole childhood and teen years are gone. Even young adult life. I can see he's going to be a problem. So, yeah. If this were a literal history, we would have all this extra information. We'd have his youth. There are other scriptures that talk about his youth when he pushed off a kid off a roof. That was pretty funny. But there's if this were literal history, when he turns 18, if he's not married and gets a year off for his honeymoon, he would have to enlist in the Roman army. That was the requirement during that time period. And none of that is discussed. Jesus, the warrior king, it is in the book of Jesus that follows the Torah. He's a warrior king that leads the house of Israel to conquer Israel. And none of that is archaeologically accurate, nor historically accurate. It's the wrong time periods, the wrong order, and yeah, it's total chaos. Thus, it's the manner of prophesying of the learning of the Jews. This is how you identify it, is that you don't turn the real history according to your interpretation of the Bible. You learn the real history first and then see what they're talking about. That's why I went over with you in my videos the real history of the church and then went over the Book of Mormon with you. Because they wrote it just as the Book of Mormon says it was done. Prophesying of the learning of the Jews. You never believe me. You come to one video and you show your hatred. And so, yeah, 2017 is the start of his ministry. Catching on? And so it's the latter days. And notice it's a 3-year ministry. 2020. What have I been scolding you about all these time since you missed it in 2020? The Exodus. Yeah. And so Interestingly, they don't have an Exodus in the Gospels. Jesus doesn't lead the people away from Israel to the Promised Land. He doesn't restore the temple. He actually ends up having it destroyed. And so, yeah, that's why the Jews don't accept Jesus as their Savior. And I don't understand Jews for Jesus. What the hell happened to them? But you see instead at the end a cross rather than a post. The post is what the Romans used. They didn't use a cross. Why are they putting a cross? Again, prophesying after the learning of the Jews. We see in the beginning they're giving us a star date for the beginning. Do you think maybe that's a star date for the end of the millennium? The end of the latter days? To start the millennium? Yeah, Revelation 19. And it crosses over one location in America. Yep, America. See, all these guys knew this, and they put it in Scripture. And then Constantine screwed it all up. So Christians have no clue. Mormons have no clue since Brigham Young. And so that's just a brief thing of just Matthew. So Mark. And we start with John the Baptist. He skips the whole star date thing altogether. Goes right to the start of the ministry, which is still the same year. He just doesn't give us the start date for it. And then closes with the end of the latter days, with the crucifixion on the cross rather than a post. And so Luke does John the Baptist as well as Jesus, even though Son of the Most High, which makes him Son Most High, Son Amen. And so you get extra stories developing the characters of Mary and Elizabeth, and so on and so forth. And then we get to baptism. I forgot to mention in Matthew, I saw somebody complaining about frankincense and myrrh. It most likely was an SNL skit, or it could have been Bill Maher, wondering why would a baby want frankincense, gold, and myrrh? Gold, sure, for the mother. But frankincense and myrrh? No, nobody seems to understand. That's what you use for embalming when a person's died. And so we're getting a birth with a death. Anybody familiar with my telling you about St. Patty's Day? The English Druids did a story of St. Patrick, which never happened because the snakes were already long gone out of Ireland. But they rendered his date as his death date rather than his birth date. You think maybe they knew something? After all, they were the sun god Druids with the hidden name. So, yeah, that's what's going on here. It's death date, birth, all intermingled. So in the Book of Mormon, there's a birth date and a death date involved. Isn't that interesting? Alright. And so then there's the temple. And what happens in the temple? Which temple is it? It's the temple of angels. This is why I told you the prophecies of the Mormon Christ, according to Joseph Smith, is supposed to be from parents in the Mormon Church who are sealed in the temple of angels. He too going through the temple of angels for his endeavor. And hold on. Luke also includes a prophecy by Isaiah, the voice of one crying in the wilderness. for John, which is also in Matthew and Mark, but includes a genealogy as well, this time back to Adam rather than just Abraham. And it's kind of confusing again because Jesus isn't the end result of the first genealogy in Matthew. And when we get to the end of, oops, they go the other direction. 30 years of age, which is a symbolic number. 2020 is actually supposed to be 50 because of the Exodus and 50 and Jubilee year. So yeah, they're still calling him the son of Joseph, where Joseph was the genealogy in Matthew. So they're doing the same genealogy, but they're doing a different lineage back. It's not the same people in many instances. So that's an interesting twist. But it's for story purposes, to show that he comes through the royal lineage, even though he was immaculately conceived. No, that's not the learning of the Jews. That was Constantine who caused that one. And so then at the end of his ministry, again, you have the April 2024 with the cross instead of the post. And I'm pretty sure they all say cross, don't they? Maybe I should check. Peter denies him, which is interesting. Caiaphas betrays him, orders his death. Caiaphas is the high priest of the great and abominable church in the story terms. He is Pharaoh. Let's see, so it looks like 23 here. Crucified. King of the Jews. And I didn't tell you in the beginning, did I? All of this is based on the prophecy that we find not only in Isaiah, but also of Deuteronomy, where the author is using Moses' character to tell us that a man like Moses will come in the future. And that's how we know we're supposed to compare the latter days with the Exodus. So creeping death, 3 days of darkness. They do 3 hours in the Gospels, which is interesting. The Book of Mormon does 3 days. Creeping death, stars falling from heaven, 3 solar eclipses. Yeah, it's supposed to be the same. And it was in 2020, and you missed it. And here I am, because you missed it. Anyway, where was I? We're looking for cross. Demanding him be crucified. It looks like they're just saying crucified, not saying cross. Oh, nope. They laid the cross that he might bear it. Yeah. So all of them use the cross. And it has to do with the first and second, or first and last solar eclipses over America. The time frame given in John, his revelation. And Samson, as I've gone over with you, also. Because again, prophesying after the learning of the Jews. And then John. John goes and talks about the word first and foremost, and Joseph Smith does a thing about the priesthood in changing it. And then goes right into John baptizing. So you can see they're all starting in the latter days, the beginning of his ministry. They're not interested in his earlier childhood. Those are other scriptures that were rejected from the Bible. So if you want to learn about his childhood, you need to go to those other plain and precious parts that were removed. So, for example, the book of Jasher has a story about Moses as a baby. He goes and sits on Pharaoh's lap, takes the crown off his head and puts it on his head. Pharaoh wants him executed. Which is why many mothers end up shaving off their hair. And so one of the priests says, hold on here. Let's do a test. He's just a baby. We'll put a gem out on the floor there, and then we'll put a hot burning coal. If the baby goes for the gem, yeah, we'll slaughter it. If he goes for the hot burning coal, we'll let him live. He goes and burns his tongue and finger to pick it up with on the hot burning coal. And that's a prophecy after the learning of the Jews. So you're supposed to be looking for that, Mormons, right? Because section 103 verse 16, in case I forget after this, or if I get more disturbed. Let's go to Mary Magdalene, his wife. You didn't think the marriage supper feast at the temple of the Lamb would be just him and the church, did you? Okay, so Mary's weeping. She's not supposed to be there. This is contrary to Jewish law. And so, yeah, this is definitely not literal history. And pay attention to this. Jesus then appears. Woman, why weepest thou? Woman. Not virgin. Woman. This is his wife. And he calls her woman, not virgin. Maiden, as otherwise translated. Why? Because they've had kids. She's had kids. That's why she's called woman in the scriptures. Otherwise she'd be called a virgin or a maiden. Or depending on the translator, young girl. Or a woman with reproach, or something like that. Here's the Isaiah passage. Please take away our reproach. All 7 of us women will have sex with you and stay with you. We'll take care of ourselves financially, but we don't want to be without child. And no, that's not a prophecy of polygamy. And so then she realizes it's her husband, and she turned herself. Wrong translation. Because he then says, touch me not. She went to physically embrace him sexually. And he says, don't touch me yet. I have not yet ascended to my Father. Again, 8 April 2024. The wedding supper feast of the Lamb at the temple, when he becomes the king with the marriage to solidify his kingdom. And you missed the Exodus. But that's what he's referring to here, is we have not reached 8 April 2024, even though he was crucified on a cross. We're at 8 April 2024. This is the only place, only of the 4 that has that part of it. There's others that show Mary standing among the apostles, because Jesus told her secrets that he didn't tell Peter. James was actually the leader of the church, which is interesting because James is Jacob, the usurper. So Jesus is murdered, and Jacob the usurper takes over. Hilarious, once you understand it. So, yeah. I think I was going to look for the cross, wasn't I? Was it in 19? Scourged and crucified. His robe, King of the Jews. Crown of thorns. Which is the comparable in Egyptian with the pyramid. It's a thinner triangle, the crown, or the thorns, but that's why he's illustrating the mocking, because he's supposed to be the king of David, the son of David, Solomon, the king of peace. And so they're using thorns here rather than pyramids to illustrate the kingdom of David, the double D's of Paleo-Hebrew, which I've gone over with you, has multiple meanings, and yes, sexual as well as nurturing love. The mother, and crucifying, cross, bearing his cross. Yep, everybody uses the cross. So he gives the date, but then they throw in the story of, we haven't had the wedding supper feast yet, can't do it. So and so now do you see why the Book of Mormon starts off in the year 2017, the first year of the reign of King Zedekiah, with the star date from Revelation chapter 12? They knew what they were doing. But if you're going to take it literally, if you're going to take Jesus literally and deny reality, deny the truth of history, you're going to be messed up, and you're going to be the enemy, as you're going to cause holy wars and dear God, we got some problems coming up. And so yeah, the Deuteronomy 18, that's the prophecy that everybody's looking for and waiting for. And 15 through 18, the man like Moses. And Joseph Smith had some big cojones as he declared that prophecy was going to be a Mormon out of the great and abominable church that murders him and takes over his church and names it with the abominable Christ. Isn't that fun? So, alrighty.